Captain Lee Dae-hyun stood on the bridge of the exploration ship New Seoul and stared at the empty star map. 3 months into their deep space mission, the silence was becoming harder to ignore. The ship's computers had scanned 17 star systems, analyzed hundreds of planets, and listened for any sign of intelligent life. They found nothing but cosmic background noise. "Still no signals from this sector either, Captain," reported Navigator Oh Hyeran from her station. She was the youngest member of the crew at 26, but her skills in spatial navigation were unmatched. Her fingers moved across the control panel as she adjusted their scanning frequencies for the 100th time that day. Dae-hyun nodded slowly. He had commanded military vessels for 15 years before accepting this mission, but nothing had prepared him for the weight of galactic silence. Earth scientists had spent decades listening to space, hoping to hear even a whisper from another civilization. When the silence continued, the United Colonial Authority decided to go looking instead. "How long until we reach the next system?" Dae-hyun asked. 18 hours if we maintain current speed," Hyeran replied. "The fourth planet shows atmospheric readings that suggest it could support life. Temperature ranges look promising too." Chief Engineer Park Ji-won looked up from her workstation near the back of the bridge. She had designed the void jump drive that made this mission possible, allowing them to cross vast distances in days instead of decades. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her uniform showed the oil stains that came with hands-on engineering work. "The drive systems are running smoothly," Ji-won said. "We could push harder if needed, but I recommend we stick to the planned schedule. The void jumps are still new technology, and I want to monitor how they affect the ship's systems over long periods." Dr. Kim Min-ho emerged from the lower decks, carrying his tablet filled with biological data from their recent planetary surveys. As the mission's xenobiologist, he had spent years preparing to study alien life forms. His laboratory was equipped with the most advanced analysis equipment Earth could provide, but so far it had only examined empty soil samples and dead rock formations. "Any luck with the samples from the last world?" Dae-hyun asked. Min-ho shook his head. "The same pattern we've seen before. The chemical signatures show that life existed there once, possibly millions of years ago. Complex carbon-based compounds, evidence of what might have been bacterial communities, but nothing recent. Whatever lived there is long gone." The bridge fell quiet except for the gentle hum of the ship's systems. Dae-hyun had read all the theories before they left Earth. Some scientists believed intelligent life was extremely rare. Others thought civilizations destroyed themselves before they could expand beyond their home worlds. A few suggested that space itself was too hostile for complex life to survive for long periods. None of those theories felt right now that they were out here in the vast emptiness. "Captain," Hyeran said suddenly, her voice carrying a note of excitement, "I'm picking up something unusual from the target system. Not artificial signals, but the spectral analysis shows some interesting mineral formations on the third planet. Very geometric patterns." Ji-won moved to look over Hyeran's shoulder at the readouts. "Those formations are too regular to be natural. Someone built those structures." Dae-hyun felt his pulse quicken. After months of empty worlds, they might finally have found proof that intelligence had existed somewhere besides Earth. "Can you determine how old they are from this distance?" "Not precisely," Hyeran replied, "but based on erosion patterns visible from orbit, I'd estimate they're ancient, probably thousands of years old at minimum." Dr. Min-ho joined them at the navigation station. "If there are artificial structures, there might be preserved biological material nearby. Even extinct civilizations leave traces that can tell us about their biology and culture." "Set course for the third planet," Dae-hyun ordered, "and prepare the landing teams. We're going to investigate personally." The next 18 hours passed slowly as the New Seoul approached the mysterious world. The crew worked with renewed energy, preparing equipment and running through landing protocols. It felt good to have a concrete objective after so much empty searching. As they entered orbit around the planet, the structures became clearer on their screens. Massive geometric shapes rose from the surface like crystalline mountains. They were clearly artificial, but their purpose remained unknown. The planet's atmosphere was thin but breathable with basic equipment. No electromagnetic activity, reported Hiren. No heat signatures that suggest active machinery. If anyone lives down there, they're not using technology we can detect. Jiwan studied the energy readings from her engineering station. The materials in those structures are fascinating. They're reflecting energy in ways that suggest some kind of advanced crystalline technology. But there's no power source I can identify. Dr. Minho was already preparing his field equipment. I'm reading trace organic compounds in the atmosphere. Not enough to indicate living organisms, but enough to suggest biological activity happened here relatively recently, in geological terms. Daehyun made his decision. We'll take a shuttle down for direct investigation. Minho, you're with me to analyze any biological evidence. Jiwon, I need you to examine those structures and determine what they were built for. Hiren, you'll monitor from orbit and maintain communication. Understood, Captain, the three officers replied together. As the shuttle descended through the alien atmosphere, Daehyun couldn't shake a strange feeling of unease. The structures grew larger as they approached, revealing intricate details that suggested incredible sophistication. Yet there was something wrong about the scene below them. The landing site was completely silent. No movement, no sounds, no signs of any life at all. The structures were beautiful and complex, but they felt empty in a way that went beyond mere abandonment. They felt dead. Beginning atmospheric analysis, Dr. Minho reported as they touched down. Air is safe for limited exposure with masks. Gravity is about 90% of Earth normal. They stepped out of the shuttle onto a surface covered in fine, crystalline sand. The nearest structure towered above them, its faceted walls catching and reflecting the light of the alien sun in patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. Whatever built these things, Jiwon said quietly, they understood materials science better than we do. These crystals are incorporating elements I've never seen used in construction before. Dr. Minho knelt and collected soil samples near the base of the structure. I'm detecting complex organic molecules in the ground, definitely biological in origin, but heavily degraded. This civilization has been gone for a very long time. As they explored deeper into the crystal structures, one question kept growing in Daehyun's mind. Where was everyone? If civilizations could build something this magnificent, why was the galaxy so quiet? What had happened to all the voices that should be calling out across the stars? The silence felt heavier now, weighted with the presence of something that had once been alive but was now gone forever. Dr. Kim Minho carefully placed his scanner against the crystalline wall of the largest structure. The readings made no sense according to everything he knew about biology. The organic traces weren't just old, they were perfectly preserved, as if the life that created them had vanished in an instant. Captain, you need to see this, Minho called to Daehyun, who was examining strange markings on another wall. These biological signatures suggest the inhabitants were silicon-based life forms. But look at these energy patterns. Daehyun studied the scanner display. Even with his military training, the technical data was hard to understand, but one thing was clear. The readings show they were alive, and then they just stopped. No gradual decline, no signs of disease or damage. They were there, and then they weren't. Chief Engineer Park Ji-won emerged from deeper inside the structure, her equipment pack heavy with sample containers. I've found something that might explain it. There are energy residues throughout these buildings that don't match any known power source. Whatever they used for technology, it was based on principles we haven't discovered yet. Back on the ship, Navigator Oh Hyerin monitored the away team from the bridge. She had been experiencing strange headaches since they arrived at this world, but she didn't want to worry the others. The pain came in waves, accompanied by sounds that seemed to come from inside her head rather than through her ears. Away team, this is New Seoul, she reported over the communication system. I'm detecting some unusual energy fluctuations from your location. Are you seeing anything that might cause electromagnetic disturbances? Negative, came Daehyun's voice through the radio. The structures appear completely inactive. What kind of fluctuations? Hyerin studied her instruments, but the readings kept changing. It's hard to pin down. The patterns almost look like communication signals, but they're not coming from any source I can identify. They seem to be coming from empty space itself. Doctor, Minho's voice crackled through the radio. That's impossible. Space doesn't generate organized energy patterns on its own. I know what my instruments are telling me, Hieron replied, trying to keep the frustration out of her voice. The headaches were getting worse, and the whispers in her mind were becoming more distinct. She could almost understand them, as if they were speaking in a language she had once known but forgotten. Down on the planet's surface, the away team continued their investigation. The crystalline structures were more complex than they had first appeared. Interior chambers connected through passages that formed intricate patterns, like a three-dimensional maze designed by minds that thought in ways humans couldn't easily follow. These beings were definitely intelligent, G1 observed as she recorded the architecture. But their technology was based on principles we don't understand. These crystals aren't just building materials. They're some kind of information storage system. Minho nodded as he collected more samples. I'm finding traces of neural tissue, or at least what might be the silicon equivalent. These creatures had brains, or something that served the same function. But the neural pathways are unlike anything in our biological databases. Captain Daehyun stood in what appeared to be the central chamber of the largest structure. The walls here were covered in patterns that might have been writing or art or something else entirely. How long do you estimate they've been gone? Based on the decay patterns of the organic material, I'd say at least 10,000 years, Minho answered. But the preservation is so good that it could be much longer. These structures seem designed to resist time itself. Back on the ship, Hieron's condition was worsening. The whispers in her head were becoming clearer, and she was starting to understand fragments of meaning. They weren't random sounds. They were voices speaking in panic and fear about something coming from the darkness between stars. She tried to focus on her instruments, but the readings were becoming more erratic. The energy patterns she was detecting seemed to be responding to her attention, growing stronger when she concentrated on them and fading when she looked away. New soul to away team, she called, her voice slightly strained. I think we need to consider leaving this system. The energy readings are increasing, and I'm not sure they're entirely natural. Jiwon's voice came back immediately. What do you mean, not natural? Are you detecting artificial signals? Not exactly artificial, Hieron replied, pressing her hand against her forehead as another wave of whispers washed through her mind. It's more like the space around this planet is somehow aware of us. The patterns change based on what we're doing down there. Captain Daehyun made the decision quickly. All teams return to the shuttle immediately. We'll continue analysis from orbit. As they prepared to leave the Crystal City, Dr. Minho made one final discovery. In the deepest chamber they had explored, he found what appeared to be the remains of the last inhabitants. The silicon-based creatures had died in their beds, their crystalline forms perfectly preserved but completely lifeless. Captain, look at their positions, Minho said quietly. They didn't die fighting or running. They died peacefully, as if they just went to sleep and never woke up. Daehyun studied the scene, or as if something took their minds while they slept. The shuttle ride back to the New Sol was quiet, each team member lost in their own thoughts about what they had discovered. The crystalline city represented incredible intelligence and technology, but it also represented complete extinction. An entire civilization had simply stopped existing, leaving behind only empty shells and beautiful structures. Once back on the ship, Jiwon immediately began analyzing the energy residues she had collected. The readings were unlike anything in Earth's scientific databases, suggesting technology that operated on principles humanity hadn't even theorized about. Dr. Minho worked in his laboratory, studying the biological samples. The silicon-based life forms had been more complex than Earth's carbon-based life, but they had died just as completely. Whatever had killed them had left no trace of struggle or disease. Navigator Hieron sat at her station, trying to make sense of the energy patterns. She continued to detect. The whispers in her head were quieter now that they had left the planet's surface, but they hadn't stopped entirely. If anything, they seemed to be following the ship as it moved away from the dead world. Captain, she said finally, I recommend we don't jump to the next system immediately. I think we need to understand what happened here before we risk encountering it somewhere else. Daehyun nodded grimly. They had found their first proof that intelligence existed beyond Earth, but they had also found their first evidence that something in the galaxy was very, very wrong. The silence they had been hearing wasn't just the absence of other civilizations, it was the echo of voices that had been deliberately silenced. As the new soul moved away from the crystal world, none of them noticed that the void jump drive was resonating with frequencies that matched the whispers in Hiren's mind. Captain Lee Daehyun studied the star charts in his ready room, trying to make sense of what they had discovered. 3 more dead worlds in 2 weeks, each showing the same pattern. Advanced civilizations that had simply stopped existing, leaving behind technology and structures but no living beings. The door chimed and Dr. Kim Min-ho entered, looking exhausted. He had been working 18-hour days analyzing samples from each world they visited. "Captain, I've finished the comparative analysis of all our biological findings. The results are disturbing." "How disturbing?" Daehyun asked, gesturing for Minho to sit down. "Each civilization died the same way. No disease, no violence, no environmental catastrophe. The neural tissue in every species shows the same pattern, complete cessation of brain activity while the body remained healthy. It's as if something reached into their minds and simply turned them off." Daehyun felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "You're saying something killed their consciousness but left their bodies intact?" "That's exactly what I'm saying. And based on the dating of the organic material, it didn't happen randomly. These civilizations all died within a relatively short period, maybe a few thousand years. Something swept through this region of the galaxy and eliminated every thinking being it encountered." Before Daehyun could respond, the ship's communication system activated. "Captain, to the bridge immediately. We have a situation with Navigator Oh Hyerin." They rushed to the bridge to find Hyerin collapsed at her station, Chief Engineer Park Ji-won supporting her. Hyerin's eyes were open but unfocused, and she was speaking in a language none of them recognized. "How long has she been like this?" Daehyun asked. "About 10 minutes, Ji-won replied. "She was working on the stellar navigation charts when she suddenly stopped and started speaking in that strange language. Her vital signs are stable, but she's not responding to us at all." Dr. Minho quickly examined Hyerin with his medical scanner. "Her brain activity is off the charts. It's like her mind is processing information at an impossible rate. But the strange thing is, the patterns match what I've been seeing in the dead neural tissue from the planets we visited." Suddenly Hyerin stopped speaking and looked directly at Captain Daehyun. Her voice was her own again, but her words were terrifying. "Captain, they're trying to warn us. The civilizations we found, they didn't just die, they were eaten. Something feeds on consciousness itself and it's still out there." "Who's trying to warn us?" Daehyun asked gently. "The voices in the void, the last thoughts of entire species, trapped in the space between stars. They've been trying to tell us what killed them." Hyerin struggled to sit up straighter. "It comes from the empty places, the regions where no stars shine. It hunts intelligence and devours minds." Ji-won checked her engineering displays. "Captain, remember those energy readings I've been tracking from our void jump drive? The patterns are becoming more complex. It's almost like something is learning to communicate with our technology." Dr. Minho pulled up his analysis data on the main screen. "If Hyerin is right, then every dead world we found was a victim of the same predator. A creature that exists in the void between normal space and feeds on thinking beings." "That's impossible," Daehyun said. But even as he spoke the words, he knew they weren't true. They had seen too much evidence to dismiss the possibility. Hyerin stood up slowly, her movements more controlled now. "Captain, I can hear them more clearly now, the voices of the dead civilizations. They're all saying the same thing. Don't let it follow you home. Don't lead it back to other thinking beings." The bridge fell silent as the implications hit them. If something was hunting intelligence across the galaxy, and if Earth's expansion into space had attracted its attention, then humanity itself might be in danger. "Show me these void readings," Daehyun ordered. Ji-won brought up the engineering displays. "The void jump drive works by creating a controlled tear in spacetime, allowing us to step outside normal physics for brief periods. But something else uses those same tears. Every time we jump, we're creating doorways that this entity can sense and follow. Then we stop jumping, Daehyun said immediately. It's too late for that, Hyerin said quietly. It already knows about us. It's been following our energy trail since we left the first dead world. The question now is whether we run back to Earth and warn them, or try to learn enough about this thing to fight it. Dr. Minho studied the biological data again. Based on what I'm seeing, this entity doesn't kill in the traditional sense. It absorbs consciousness, integrating the knowledge and experiences of its victims into itself. Every civilization it has consumed has made it smarter and more dangerous. How do we fight something like that? Daehyun asked. Maybe we can't, Ji-won admitted, but we might be able to understand it well enough to avoid it or shield ourselves from its attacks. The void jump technology creates barriers between different dimensions of space. If we can modify it to create barriers around consciousness itself, do it, Daehyun ordered. Whatever you need, make it happen. And prepare a message drone for immediate transmission to Earth. They need to know what we've discovered. Over the next few days, the crew worked frantically to understand their enemy. Hyerin continued to receive visions from the dead civilizations, each one providing more pieces of the puzzle. The entity was ancient, possibly older than the galaxy itself. It moved through dimensions that normal matter couldn't access, emerging into regular space only when it detected sufficient intelligence to justify hunting. Park Ji-won modified the ship's systems, using the void jump technology to create what she called consciousness shields, energy barriers that could theoretically protect human minds from psychic attack. The modifications were untested and dangerous, but they were running out of time. Dr. Minho made his own disturbing discovery. The human brain structure was different from the alien species they had studied. Where other civilizations showed signs of complete neural shutdown, humans might be naturally resistant to the entity's feeding methods. Evolution on Earth had created minds that were chaotic and unpredictable in ways that might confuse a predator adapted to more ordered forms of consciousness. We might be the first species this thing has encountered that it can't easily digest, Minho reported. Our thoughts are too disorganized, too emotional. We might actually have a chance. Captain Daehyun looked at his crew, exhausted, frightened, but still determined to fight. They were light years from home, facing an enemy that had destroyed civilizations across the galaxy, but they were human, and humans had never been good at accepting defeat. All right, he said firmly. If this thing wants to hunt human consciousness, let's give it more than it can handle. We're going to find it and make it regret ever noticing our species. As the new soul changed course toward the empty region of space where the entity was strongest, none of them knew if they were heading toward humanity's salvation or its doom. But they knew they couldn't run home and hide while something that ate minds prepared to follow them back to Earth. The void between stars had been silent for too long. It was time to fill it with human defiance. The new soul drifted through a region of space that shouldn't exist. No stars, no planets, no cosmic dust. Just absolute emptiness that stretched in all directions. Chief Engineer Park Ji-won monitored the consciousness shields she had installed throughout the ship, watching energy readings that fluctuated in patterns that made her stomach turn. Shields are holding steady, she reported to Captain Lee Daehyun, though her voice carried little confidence. But I'm detecting massive energy disturbances about 50,000 kilometers ahead. Whatever's out there, it's big, Navigator O. Hyerin sat at her station with her eyes closed, listening to voices that grew stronger with every passing hour. The dead civilizations were screaming warnings now, their final thoughts echoing through dimensions humans barely understood. It knows we're here, she said suddenly. It's been watching us since we entered this region. The entity is curious about us. Our minds are different from anything it has encountered before. Dr. Kim Minho worked frantically at his biological analysis station, trying to understand how human consciousness might resist the entity's feeding methods. Our neural patterns are incredibly chaotic compared to the alien species we've studied. Most intelligent life evolves toward efficiency and order, but human brains are built on controlled chaos. That might be our advantage. Captain Daehyun studied the tactical displays, though he knew conventional weapons would be useless against an enemy that existed partially outside normal physics. What exactly are we dealing with? Can anyone give me specifics about this thing's capabilities? Before anyone could answer, the ship's lights dimmed and a sound filled the bridge that was felt more than heard. It was like the whisper of wind through dead leaves, but it seemed to come from inside their own minds rather than through the air. Contact, Hyerin announced, though her voice sounded strained. It's trying to establish communication. The main view screen flickered and displayed an image that hurt to look at directly. Shapes that existed in too many dimensions folded in on themselves, creating patterns that human eyes couldn't properly process. When the entity spoke, its words formed directly in their minds without passing through their ears. Interesting specimens, the voice said, carrying the weight of millions of consumed thoughts. Your mental patterns are chaotic beyond my experience. Most intelligence seeks order and logic, but you embrace contradiction and emotion. Why do you resist natural selection? Captain Daehyun stepped forward, fighting the urge to look away from the impossible display. We resist because that's what humans do. We don't accept that survival of the fittest means the strongest predator wins. We change the rules, the entities. Communication carried what might have been amusement. I have consumed the final thoughts of species across thousands of worlds. Each believed their consciousness was unique and precious, yet all fell to the same hunger. Your chaos intrigues me, but it will not save you. Dr. Minho suddenly understood something crucial. Captain, it's not just communicating with us, it's tasting our thoughts, trying to figure out how to digest human consciousness. Every second we spend talking to this thing, we're giving it more information about how our minds work. Park Ji-won's console erupted with warning signals. The consciousness shields are being tested. It's probing our defenses, looking for weaknesses. In the barrier technology, the entity's presence pressed against their minds like a physical weight. Several crew members on the lower decks collapsed as it focused its attention on them, their minds temporarily overwhelmed by contact with something vast and hungry. Your defenses are crude but effective, the entity observed. The chaotic nature of your thoughts makes it difficult to establish a feeding connection, but I am patient. I have consumed civilizations that resisted for centuries before finally succumbing. Navigator Hyerin stood up suddenly, her eyes blazing with determination. You made a mistake coming here. Every species you've killed was ordered and logical, easy for you to understand and consume. But humans aren't like that. We're unpredictable and we fight dirty. Elaborate, the entity demanded, its curiosity clearly piqued. Instead of answering, Hyerin turned to Ji-won. Can you reverse the polarity on the consciousness shields? Instead of keeping our thoughts in, use them to project our mental chaos outward. Ji-won's eyes widened with understanding. That's completely insane. It could burn out our neural systems. Or it could give this thing the worst case of mental indigestion it's ever experienced, Hyerin replied with a fierce grin. Captain Daehyun made the decision in seconds. Do it. If we're going down, we're taking this monster with us. The entity seemed to sense their intentions. Its presence pressed harder against the ship, and crew members throughout the new Sol began experiencing severe headaches as it attempted to force its way through their defenses. Your resistance is futile, it declared. I have fed on minds far more sophisticated than yours. Submit, and your deaths will be peaceful. Consciousness shields reversed and ready, Ji-won announced, her hands hovering over the activation controls. Captain, this is going to hurt. A lot. Do it now, Daehyun ordered. The shields reversed, and suddenly the chaotic patterns of human thought exploded outward from the ship like a psychic shockwave. Years of human emotion, creativity, love, hate, fear, joy, and everything else that made humanity unique crashed into the entity's consciousness like a tsunami of pure chaos. The effect was immediate and devastating. The entity's perfect order, built on millions of years of consuming logical alien minds, was suddenly flooded with the beautiful madness of human thought. Emotions it had never experienced, creativity it couldn't understand, and contradictions that defied its fundamental nature. What have you done? The entity screamed across dimensions, its voice filled with something that might have been pain. Dr. Minho watched the biological monitors as the crew's neural activity spiked to dangerous levels. It's working. The entity is retreating, but our brains are being pushed to their limits. We can't maintain this much longer. Captain Daehyun felt his own consciousness being stretched to the breaking point, but he could sense the entity's confusion and pain. For the first time in its existence, it was experiencing something it couldn't digest or control. "Remember this," he shouted at the retreating presence. "Humanity doesn't play by anyone else's rules. We make our own." The entity's presence withdrew, rapidly, fleeing to the deeper voids between dimensions. As it left, its final communication carried undertones of genuine fear. "Chaos brings only destruction. Your species will consume itself with its own contradictions." "Maybe," Daehyun replied, as the consciousness shields returned to normal. "But we'll do it on our own terms." As the entity disappeared into the cosmic dark, the crew of the New Soul slowly recovered from their ordeal. They had wounded something that had fed on intelligence for millions of years, but they had also learned that humanity's greatest weakness, their chaotic emotional nature, might also be their greatest strength. Park Ji-won ran diagnostics on all systems, while Dr. Minho checked the crew for neural damage. Navigator Hyron sat quietly at her station, no longer hearing the voices of the dead civilizations. The entity had taken those echoes with it when it fled. "Is it gone?" someone asked. "For now," Hyron replied. "But it will be back. And next time it will be prepared for us." Captain Daehyun looked at his exhausted but victorious crew. They had survived first contact with humanity's most dangerous enemy, but the real battle was just beginning. Somewhere in the void between galaxies, an ancient predator was learning to hunt the most unpredictable prey it had ever encountered. The galaxy's long silence was about to be broken by the sound of war. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks, but Captain Lee Daehyun spent every day preparing for the most important report of his career. How do you tell an entire species that they are alone in the galaxy because something hunts intelligence itself? How do you explain that humanity's expansion into space has attracted the attention of a predator that has consumed civilizations for millions of years? Dr. Kim Minho worked tirelessly to compile evidence from the dead worlds they had discovered. His biological analysis showed the same pattern on every planet: advanced life forms that had simply stopped thinking, their neural tissue intact but completely inactive. The documentation was thorough and undeniable, but the implications were terrifying. "The entity we encountered is just one of many," Minho reported during their final crew meeting before reaching Earth. "Based on the distribution of dead civilizations across our survey area, I estimate there are at least dozens of these predators scattered throughout the galaxy." Chief Engineer Park Ji-won had spent the return journey refining her consciousness shield technology. The prototype that had saved their lives was crude and dangerous, but she believed it could be improved and mass-produced. "The good news is that human neural patterns seem naturally resistant to these entities," she explained. "Our chaotic thought processes are difficult for them to digest. The bad news is that resistance isn't immunity. Given enough time and exposure, they could eventually adapt to human consciousness." Navigator O'Hyaron had changed during their encounter with the Void Predator. The constant whispers from dead civilizations had stopped, but she retained an enhanced ability to detect the entities across vast distances. Her modified perception made her invaluable for future defense efforts, but it also left her isolated from normal human experience. "I can feel them out there," she said quietly, "waiting in the empty spaces between star systems. They know about Earth now, and they're patient. They'll watch and learn before they make their next move." The United Colonial Authority's headquarters on Luna buzzed with urgent activity as the New Soul approached the solar system. Captain Daehyun's preliminary reports had already caused panic in the highest levels of human government. The discovery that humanity was alone among living intelligences was shocking enough, but the reason for that solitude was beyond anyone's worst fears. Director Sarah Chen, head of the Colonial Authority, met the crew personally as they docked at Luna Station. Her normally composed demeanor showed cracks of strain as she reviewed their findings. "Captain, your reports suggest we're facing an enemy that has eliminated every other intelligence in the galaxy. How confident are you in these conclusions?" "Completely confident," Daehyun replied without hesitation. We have biological evidence from 17 dead worlds, direct contact with one of the entities, and testimony from crew members who experienced psychic communication with the victims. The threat is real and immediate. The briefing room filled with Earth's top military leaders, scientists, and government officials as the crew presented their findings. The evidence was overwhelming, but the scale of the threat left many struggling to accept the reality. General Marcus Torres, Earth's highest-ranking military officer, studied the tactical analysis with growing concern. If these entities can move through dimensions we don't understand and attack consciousness itself, how do we defend against them? Our entire military doctrine is based on protecting physical assets and territory. Dr. Minho stepped forward to address the question. The entities seem to feed by establishing psychic connections with their targets. Physical barriers are useless, but consciousness shields based on Engineer Park's design can disrupt their feeding mechanisms. We need to militarize this technology immediately. How long would it take to retrofit our existing fleet with these consciousness shields? Director Chen asked. Park Ji-won had prepared for this question. With unlimited resources and full industrial cooperation, we could have basic shields installed on all major vessels within 6 months. But that's just the beginning. We need dedicated research facilities to improve the technology and train crews to use it effectively. The room erupted in discussions about resource allocation, military reorganization, and the massive undertaking required to defend humanity from an enemy unlike anything they had ever faced. But Captain Daehyun had a more immediate concern. Director, we need to discuss the psychological impact of this information on the general population. Learning that we're alone in the galaxy and under threat from cosmic predators could cause widespread panic. Director Chen nodded grimly. We've already begun preparing controlled information releases. The scientific community will receive the biological evidence first, followed by gradual disclosure to the public about the threat level. Full military mobilization will begin immediately under the pretext of expanded colonial security. Navigator Hyerin spoke up from her position near the back of the room. Director, there's something else you need to know. I can still sense the entities and they're moving. Not toward Earth directly, but they're repositioning themselves throughout the galaxy. They're preparing for something. Preparing for what? General Torres demanded. I think they're getting ready to test our defenses more systematically, Hyerin replied. Our encounter showed them that humans are different from other species they've consumed. They'll want to understand exactly how different before making their next move. Dr. Minho presented his most disturbing finding. Based on my analysis of alien neural tissue, these entities don't just kill their victims. They absorb their knowledge and experiences. Every civilization they've consumed has made them smarter and more dangerous. If they successfully adapt to human consciousness, they'll gain access to all of our scientific knowledge and strategic thinking. The weight of that possibility settled over the room like a dark cloud. Humanity's greatest strength, their ability to think creatively and adapt to new challenges, could become their greatest weakness if the entities learn to exploit it. Director, Chen made the decision that would define humanity's future. As of this moment, Project Mindguard is our highest priority. Captain Daehyun, you'll command a new deep space fleet dedicated to hunting these entities before they can organize a coordinated attack on human space. Dr. Minho, you'll head our Xenobiological Research Division. Engineer Park, you'll oversee the development and production of consciousness shield technology. Navigator Hyerin, you'll train our new psychic detection specialists. Captain Daehyun felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders once again. Director, we're talking about going to war with enemies that have successfully eliminated every other intelligent species in the galaxy. What makes us think humanity can succeed where others failed? Director Chen's expression hardened with determination. Because we're human, Captain. We don't accept that the universe gets to decide who lives and who dies. If something out there thinks it can hunt us into extinction, it's about to learn why Earth produced the most stubborn species in the galaxy. Over the following months, humanity transformed itself from a curious species, exploring the stars, into a civilization preparing for the fight of its existence. Consciousness shield technology was refined and mass-produced. Military doctrine was rewritten to account for psychic warfare. Colonial expansion continued. But now every new settlement was also a fortress designed to detect and repel entities that fed on thought itself. The crew of the New Soul became legends, the first humans to encounter the galaxy's greatest predator, and live to tell about it. But they knew their victory had been temporary. Somewhere in the void between stars, ancient intelligences were learning to hunt the chaotic, emotional, brilliantly unpredictable minds that called themselves human. The galaxy had been silent for millions of years, but that silence was about to end. Humanity was about to fill the cosmic dark with the sound of defiance, and the entities that had grown comfortable in their role as apex predators were about to discover that Earth had produced a prey species that refused to be eaten. Quietly, the real war was just beginning. 5 years after first contact with the Void Predators, Admiral Lee Daehyun stood on the command bridge of the battleship Soul's Pride, watching his fleet emerge from void jump near the edge of human space. 50 ships equipped with the most advanced consciousness shield technology humanity could produce spread out in defensive formation around a new colonial world called Haven's Light. The settlement below housed 3 million people, but more importantly, it served as a beacon station in humanity's growing network of psychic early warning systems. Chief Engineer Park Ji-won, now Director of Consciousness Technology, had designed the beacon arrays to detect void predator movements across entire star systems. Beacon Station 7 is online and transmitting, reported Commander Oh Hyerin from the communications station. Her role as humanity's first psychic navigator had evolved into leading the Void Watch, an elite division of humans specially trained to detect and combat entities that existed between dimensions. Any sign of predator activity in this sector? Daehyun asked. Negative, sir. The local void is clear, but I'm detecting faint traces of old predator signatures near the system's edge. Something was here recently, but it moved on without attacking. Dr. Kim Min-ho, now Earth's leading expert on xenobiology and psychic warfare, reviewed data from his research stations throughout human space. His network of facilities studied the remains of dead civilizations while developing new countermeasures against consciousness-based attacks. Admiral, I've completed analysis of the latest predator specimens our hunter teams captured. The entities are definitely adapting to human neural patterns, but slowly. Our chaotic thought processes are still giving them significant trouble. Daehyun nodded with satisfaction. The hunter teams were one of humanity's most successful innovations in the war against the void predators. Instead of waiting for attacks, human forces actively sought out the entities in deep space, using modified consciousness shields to trap and study them. How many entities have we eliminated this month? He asked. 17 confirmed kills across all sectors, Hyerin replied, but long-range sensors suggest there are still hundreds of them scattered throughout the galaxy. We're making progress, but this is going to be a long war. The transformation of human civilization had been remarkable to witness. Colonial expansion had accelerated rather than slowed, despite the threat. Every new world settled was also a fortress world, defended by consciousness shield generators and staffed with Void Watch personnel trained to detect psychic threats. Admiral, came a voice from the tactical station. We're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. Director Chen wants to speak with you immediately. The holographic display activated to show Director Chen, now graying but still sharp-eyed after 5 years of coordinating humanity's defense against cosmic predators. Behind her, Daehyun could see the bustling activity of the expanded Colonial Authority headquarters. Admiral, we've had a breakthrough. Dr. Min-ho's research teams have discovered something extraordinary about the predators' origins. They're not native to this galaxy at all. Dr. Min-ho appeared on the display, his excitement visible despite the seriousness of the situation. Admiral, we've been analyzing the quantum signatures of captured entities, and they all show evidence of extragalactic origin. These things came from somewhere else, probably the void between galaxies themselves. What does that mean for our defensive strategy? Daehyun asked. It means we're not just fighting for our own survival. Director, Chen replied. We're fighting to reclaim our galaxy from an invasion that has been going on for millions of years. Every dead civilization we've found was a victim of these extra-dimensional parasites. Commander Hyerin looked up from her psychic monitoring station. Sir, if they're from outside our galaxy, that means there might be other galaxies where intelligence still exists. Civilizations that haven't been invaded yet, or ones that successfully fought off the predators. Director Chen nodded. That's exactly what we're hoping. But first we need to secure our own galaxy. The good news is that our resistance seems to be working. Predator activity has decreased significantly in sectors with heavy human presence. Dr. Minho brought up a galactic map showing the spread of human colonies and the corresponding reduction in void predator sightings. The entities appear to avoid areas where consciousness shield technology is widespread. Our chaotic neural patterns don't just resist their feeding, they actually cause them pain when amplified through the shield generators. Pain is good, Daehyun said grimly. Pain means they can be hurt. And if they can be hurt, they can be killed. Over the past 5 years, humanity had developed tactics that would have seemed impossible before first contact. Void Watch teams used modified consciousness shields to project concentrated human emotions and memories at attacking entities, overwhelming their ordered minds with pure chaos. Hunter fleets tracked predators through dimensions humans barely understood, using psychic navigation techniques pioneered by Hyeron and her trainees. Admiral, Hyeron reported, I'm detecting something new. Long-range psychic sensors are picking up what might be distress signals from beyond the galactic rim. The patterns are similar to the voices we heard from dead civilizations. But these are active transmissions. Dr. Minho's eyes widened. Active transmissions mean living civilizations. There are other species out there that survived the predator invasions. Director Chen leaned forward eagerly. Can we establish communication? I'm trying, Hyeron replied, her enhanced psychic abilities focused on the faint signals. The transmissions are incredibly weak and coming from multiple directions outside our galaxy. But I think I'm beginning to understand the language patterns. For the next several hours, the combined expertise of humanity's best minds worked to decode the mysterious signals. What they discovered changed everything they thought they knew about their situation. Admiral, Hyeron announced finally, I've made contact. There's a network of surviving civilizations scattered across multiple galaxies. They call themselves the Consortium of Light, and they've been fighting the void predators for millions of years. The main display activated to show a translated message from the distant alliance. The text appeared in human writing, but the concepts behind it were clearly alien. Greetings, chaotic ones. We have observed your resistance to the Devourers, and are impressed by your success. Your mental patterns are unlike any we have encountered. We offer alliance and shared knowledge in the war against the darkness between worlds. Director Chen stood up slowly, the implications hitting her fully. We're not alone after all. Not just in our galaxy, but in the universe. Dr. Minho was already analyzing the technical data included with the message. They're offering to share consciousness shield technology that's centuries ahead of ours. With their knowledge and our natural resistance, we could actually win this war. Admiral Daehyun felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he hadn't realized he was carrying. For 5 years, he had carried the responsibility of defending humanity against enemies that had destroyed every other intelligence in the galaxy. Now he learned that other species had not only survived, but were fighting back. Commander Hyeron, send our response. Tell them that humanity accepts their alliance and is ready to join the fight to reclaim our galaxy. As the message was transmitted, across the cosmic void, Daehyun looked out at the human colony below. 3 million people lived their lives in the shadow of an ancient threat, but they lived with hope and determination. Children played in streets protected by consciousness shield generators. Scientists worked to understand enemies that existed beyond normal physics. Soldiers trained to fight wars in dimensions that previous generations couldn't imagine. Sir, Hyeron reported, the consortium is transmitting detailed technical specifications for advanced shield technology. They're also sending strategic information about predator weaknesses we haven't discovered yet. Park Ji-won's voice came through the communication system from her research station on Earth. Admiral, this is incredible. Their shield technology doesn't just protect against psychic attacks. It can actually reverse the feeding process. We could potentially restore some of the consciousness that these entities have consumed over the millennia. The possibility of bringing back even fragments of the dead civilizations was staggering. Millions of years of knowledge, art, and culture that had been devoured by the void predators might be recoverable. Dr. Minho was studying biological data from the consortium worlds. "Admiral, look at this. The surviving species show the same neural chaos patterns that make humans resistant to the predators. Random evolution across multiple galaxies produced the same defense mechanism. We're not unique. We're part of a galactic immune response." As humanity prepared to join the Consortium of Light, Admiral Daehyun reflected on how much had changed since the crew of the New Soul first discovered the silent galaxy. What had seemed like cosmic loneliness was actually the aftermath of War, an ancient war. What had appeared to be humanity's isolation was actually their recruitment into a battle that spanned multiple galaxies. The void predators had ruled the darkness between stars for millions of years, feeding on order and logic, and perfect alien minds. But chaos had arrived in the form of emotional, unpredictable, brilliantly stubborn humans. Why?